Welcome to another edition of the Business Brains and the Bottom Line podcast. My name is Paul Delibero, your host, and my guest today is Hernán Lazarde. I hope I pronounced that correct.
Yeah, you got it right. You got it right, Paul.
Well, I'm Italian, so it's kind of like, it almost looks like an Italian name, to be honest with you.
It's French Spaniard, really.
Okay, well,
so not too far.
Not too far. That's right.
Yes,
So,
sir.
welcome to the show, Hernán.
Thank you very much for having me.
Well, Hernán, you're a Senior CyberSecurity Engineer, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit and some ransomware recommendations and experiences you've had. But one thing I like about a podcast is we can talk about anything we want. I'm always fascinated by people's, ethnicity and upbringing. So from what I understand, you were born in Venezuela. Is that correct?
Yes, correct.
And how old were you when you came here?
Shortly after my 26th birthday.
Okay, so you're an adult. So
yeah,
but you came here before the fall, correct?
Yeah, about, let's say, I came here 6 months after the first big event that occurred in Venezuela after the election, which was a general strike. I was already having some second thoughts about moving here. That strike delayed my plan a few months just because logistically it wasn't possible. But yeah, right before the big demise.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'd like to get your thoughts on that, because I actually did some reading for this because I wanted to kind of refresh myself. We all kind of familiar with the collapse of Venezuela, and I learned a few things, about what a petro state is. And when a country is, like, I think I read a statistic where 99% of Venezuela's exports are oil-based.
Yeah, I think that number may be a little higher than it was, but it was definitely more than 90%. We were extremely reliant in the oil industry.
And once that industry collapsed, when oil went from like $100 a barrel down to 30, it had no other industries in your country to rely on it. And that really was the crux of why it collapsed. Am I understanding this correctly?
Yeah, because I think the government back then really focused on getting as much as possible of the oil industry and really stopped paying attention to the other big industry that was in the country, which was, believe it or not, cattle.
Yep.
And that got completely obliterated.
Yeah.
I mean, we went from being, I believe, the second or third largest producer of meat in the whole of Latin America to not even in the top 10.
Well, that's what kind of happens, right? When you put so much focus on the oil industry, and this is not just you guys, this is several other countries that have done this. They take away from manufacturing and agriculture.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, because I mean, the thing is, when you're solely focused on one industry, in this case oil, and oil produces so much money for you, and realistically, once you set up the industry, you just need to do the normal maintaining and upkeep. That cow is going to be producing for years and years and decades and decades and decades. But if something major happens globally and the price of crude oil tumbles, you're in dire straits, because that's your only thing. So it really collapsed.
Yeah, then you got debt, hyperinflation.
Well, between the collapse of the industry and the crazy amount of corruption that has been part of the history of Venezuela for a while.
Maduro he's the president right now.
Maduro after Chavez. It was
right.
Quite crazy with Chavez, because Chavez was really the person that started putting that corruption right in front of you 100%. Not that the previous regimes never had it, but he made it be the thing, especially because he got a lot of the military involved. The military had always been behind the scenes.
Right.
With him, it's like many of his ministries and all that were being led by people from the military, and that was the other part of the equation that caused the problem. People that were not prepared to lead specific departments or areas of the Venezuelan economy.
Yeah.
just because they were his friends.
Yeah, Chavez, he was in power for a long time, correct? Like
Yes.
from the 50s, I believe. No.
No. He became president in '98. But
Chavez?
he threw two,
Okay,
Chavez.
I'm
He
thinking of
threw
someone else than okay.
probably Castro. It's who you're getting confused with. He was elected in '98, but he had attempted two different coups d'etats in the late '80s and early '90s, and that's how his figure grew so much.
Sure.
Because he became like a folk hero and all
Yeah.
that. And a lot of people fell for the snake oil that he was selling, that he was going to
Sure.
make Venezuela be this super country and all that, when in reality, he was the one that initiated the destruction of my country.
Yeah, it's too bad. I mean, you're an American now, and we're happy to have you, by the way. But Venezuela will always be your home. I don't care where you come from.
I mean,
home is home, right?
Yeah, regretfully, I don't have any more like family members living there. My direct family has, well, almost direct and indirect. We are out of the country. We are all over the world. I have my brothers live in other places in South America. Cousins live all over the globe. I mean, it's kind of crazy. I really don't have a real reason to ever go back, even though I would love to. But things have to dramatically change.
Sure.
For me to ever consider going back, just because, and not just that. I mean, I'm about to be here in the States for 20 years this coming year. So this is my life. This is my country. This is where my wife is. Where a lot of my friends are.
Yeah.
Where my second career really got going and started all the way. So I would love to, because the country was beautiful, but the realities are, this is my country now. This is my reality.
Well, that's great. That's good. And I don't know what the outcome of Venezuela is going to be, but boy, they got a lot of work to do to get back to
people. I laugh sometimes at people thinking that just because you remove Maduro, things will get better. It's decades. It's 1 or 2 decades.
Agreed.
Because the problem is, culturally, things have changed so much, the mentality of the people. And when you add the amount of people that have left, the amount of talented people that have left the country, that's raw material that you don't replace quickly.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. I read a statistic that 4,000 people a day are leaving Venezuela.
In the past probably couple of years, yes.
All over the world now.
I mean, I can give you just a very small universe. I went to I grew up in Maracaibo, Venezuela. That was my city. I went to the same school from kindergarten to high school. Okay. It's a school that I'm fourth generation going to that school. It's 130 something years and all that. Wow. My graduating class in high school, compared to many of the Americans, is incredibly small. We were 93 or 94 people.
Okay.
Out of those, I think the last number was 81 or 82 of us are outside of the country.
Wow.
A few have regretfully passed
away. Yep.
And other ones are there still struggling and trying to find a way to leave. But just look at that. That's such a small universe, and more than almost 90% of us are no longer there. Yeah. And this is 90% of people that the vast majority of us are college grads.
Sure.
With masters. Yeah. With businesses. So
those are the type of people you want to stay, right?
Those are the type of people that you need to rebuild.
Sure.
When it's time to rebuild.
Yeah. Well, we could probably talk for about 2 hours on Venezuela, but we'll leave that for another episode maybe. But kind of, you mentioned a segue now. We'll mention something earlier. So you weren't always in IT. You were in the law business, correct?
Yeah, I went to law school back home in Venezuela. It was my passion. I have always been one that a lot of people that get in law, no matter the country where you are, you do it out of this romantic idea of justice for all, and
sure, you're going to save the world
and all that, until you really open your eyes and start seeing that money talks.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of pressure.
Absolutely.
And not necessarily everybody. You won't be doing the right thing all the time, not because you don't want to do it, but because the system sometimes gets in the way of you doing the right thing.
And you know, if you're like anyone else, eventually you're sick of the fights, and you just kind of
that was me.
You just succumb, right? You just kind of not give in, but you just kind of give in, right?
That was I got to you know, to a fork in the road. I had two options: either give in and get in the bad side of the business, which, you know, based on the education that I was given by my parents and all that, was something that was never on my radar, or leave and start a new life somewhere else. I've been coming to the States since I was very young because my dad was in the oil industry. He retired 1 year before that national strike, so locally he wasn't that affected until later on when they took away his retirement pension and all that.
Oh, nice.
But I made that decision, and I moved to Houston, Texas, because I have been here so many times visiting with my dad when he would come for all business and stuff.
Yeah, so you were comfortable with Houston, so it was like a second home almost.
Houston
to you, right?
is a city very similar to my city back home. It's a very large city, very flat. I love the warm weather. I'm not a super big fan of the big humidity, but you know, I'll compare it to what we just went through with
the cold weather.
Single digit cold weather temps, you know.
Well, I'm originally from Boston, so I moved away from New England for one of the reasons was I hated winter. I hate snow, I hate shoveling, and so when it gets down to like 10 degrees, I'm like, what the heck? I moved away from this
right.
stuff, you know. But it's, I don't know about you, but it's about 70 degrees here today in Dallas.
In Houston, we are, I think, mid-70s, and the mugginess is right there, so it feels just like home. It feels perfect.
Yeah. Well, so let's continue on. So you moved to the United States. How did you get into IT, by the way? Well, that's not like an easy jump going from being a lawyer to IT. What
I mean, yes. If you look at it from that perspective, yes, it's not something common. It's not something easy and all that. But I have been a gamer my whole life.
Okay.
I've been building computers since I was like 7 or 8 years old. You know, it was something that always attracted me. My best friend from back home, it's a computer engineer grad. When we were almost done with college, we decided, hey, let's start a business. You'll do the tech part. I can help with some of the stuff. I've been speaking English since I was a kid, so I had that, and I had a lot of connections here in Houston with merchants and all that, just because people I've met through the years. And I can be the legal department, the legal arm of the company.
There you go.
So we started together. We managed to get a few contracts here and there. I negotiated those. I started looking at the IT industry with a different view, with more of like, hey, you know what? This is something that I can be doing. Even as a lawyer, I can specialize in doing this type of contracts and all that, and things would probably be very good. Things started deteriorating with the political situation back home, and I decided I don't want to do this anymore. It's time to find a new horizon. What would be not the easiest, but the least problematic and least expensive way for me to do it? Computers.
Yeah.
Because I was asked, hey, so why don't you do law in the States? Well, because it would take me 7, 8 years and a ton of money to go through the system and all that, and then become a lawyer when I was probably in my mid-30s, with really not a whole lot of relationships created in the legal field that you need to have and all that. I decided, no, it's too much. Let me use what I've made and what I've done in this year's practicing law back home, and use that to fund my move to this new industry. And I went easy. I didn't go to a big school or anything like that, because I've already had a pretty decent baseline. I decided I'm gonna start simple. I did some research, and I got a couple of associates in IT related.
Okay, good. So that got you going in the industry.
Yeah.
You know, very nice.
Yeah.
So you're in cybersecurity, which that's kind of a broad net, right? When I hear that's such a buzzword. You hear it about in the news right now.
Yeah.
It casts a wide net on security because there's a
Oh
lot
yeah.
of things that under that umbrella in
Yeah.
cybersecurity. So what type of cybersecurity are you specializing in, if any?
What I do is cloud security
Okay,
and identity and access management are my two
got it.
fortes.
Okay,
I dab into a little bit of everything, but those are my two major, which is system security engineering, if you want to,
got it.
you know,
Yeah,
encapsulate the whole thing. But I've done threat hunting, I've done pen testing, obviously. I started as a sysadmin.
sure.
What I did for about 10 years, and then I became a systems engineer and started moving up on the ladder. And the whole cybersecurity thing came to be about probably 3 or so years ago, when while with the previous employer we were conducting an audit, an assessment, and the person running the assessment, my boss at the time had to deal with a family emergency, and I was given the responsibility of talking to this gentleman 6 to 8 hours a day for 2 weeks nonstop. So at the end of that, we became friends, and out of curiosity, I asked him, "Hey, do you think I could make it in cybersecurity?" And all that. He's like, "You've been in cybersecurity up to your neck for the past 10 years. You
Yeah,
had no idea." And I'm like,
right.
"What are you talking about?" And then he, pretty much what you said, you know, such a broad net
Yeah,
that people don't really identify with cybersecurity, because cybersecurity is normally, oh, you're either a hacker or you're preventing hacking,
right.
or you're a pen tester, or you're
Yeah,
doing
you're on the offense or the defense.
sexy,
Yeah,
the
you're on the
sexy
offense or the
terms.
defense, right? Yeah,
Correct, the sexy terms. There's so many more things involved in cybersecurity that don't have enough people occupying those jobs. That's why the industry is asking for so many talent to join the lines. But regretfully, even though this is an opinion that goes for either way. Some people say that you need experience, and other people say, but you're an entry level, you don't need experience. I do believe that you need to have a certain amount of experience, maybe not the minimum 5 years that a lot of people
right.
require, but you need to have a baseline, because if you don't know what you're doing, you can create more problems that you're
Yeah.
really helping to resolve.
Yeah, I would agree with you on that. Like, too many people, you look at these requests that people are putting out there with all these years of experience, and it's like,
Yeah.
it eliminates almost everybody.
It eliminates a very large number of people. So you're working with a pool that is very small,
Yeah.
very shallow in a way, instead of having a very large amount of people that you could train a little bit and make
Yeah.
them into better professionals.
Well, that's it. That old adage, you know, would rather hire a good person than someone with maybe have a great resume, right? You can train, if you got good skill sets, you can
Right.
train someone, right?
Correct.
If you know you've got a good person.
Correct, and that's absolutely, I think, the reality out there. A lot of people get fixated with hiring based on your previous titles or the certifications that you have and all that, and omit the ability of someone to learn, because you can see that progression in a career. And the other thing is that I think sometimes many of the hiring, not necessarily decisions, but the path to get hired, are fully controlled by HR, when HR is really not a subject matter expert. They're just writing a description, and they go by the buzzwords that are out there. Like, for example, an entry level person requiring the CISSP certification. There's no way. You need to have 5 years of experience and a lot of knowledge.
Yeah.
So the moment that you put that in there, a lot of people are gonna fall off from your prospective list of candidates, because you are taking them out,
right,
by asking for something that it's nothing related to an entry level position or similar. So
yeah, no, and there's such a shortage of security folks out there that you know, I don't know. I mean, we see it. You know, I work for an IT consulting company, as you know, and that's where we come in. A lot of companies have such a void that they come to us for help, and that's
absolutely
good for us, obviously. But
yeah, exactly. I mean, it's not a bad thing for many other players in the industry, but it could also be even, I mean, you guys are not going away. You guys are going to be providing services no matter what,
Right.
because you guys will always specialize on having a very high level of talented people that can step in and help with projects and all that. But you also, companies that need services like yours need to beef up at least their numbers so that your people can do the work better and faster and more efficiently.
Yeah, no doubt about it. So you obviously you've been doing this for a while now, and one of the other big buzzwords out there is ransomware, right? That's the one that's been all over the news. Every major company's been hit, and blah 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 blah. So what's your take on ransomware? I mean, and let me set this up a little bit. What can companies, we'll first talk a little bit about your experience with it, and when companies, and we won't name names obviously, but companies that you've been hit with, but also what can we do to defend ourselves against ransomware, and if you do get hit, how can you remediate? Those kind of the three questions there.
Yeah, I've been part of 3 different events. Two as I was brought in to help remediate issues, and one I was probably maybe a couple of months into that job. It's not fun.
Yeah.
It's not fun. It ended up costing a lot of money. It ends up costing a lot of white hairs that I mean, all of this, I wasn't this white in my beard 4 years ago.
Well, at least you have some hair. Well, I have on my face. I don't have any on my head anymore.
Well, hey, it is what it is. But it's a headache. It's a headache, and it's literally, bad actors. In the simplest of terms, it's bad actors gaining access to your systems, to your networks, sitting in there, collecting information, collecting privileged credentials and all that. And when they decide to flip the switch, they literally go ahead and lock all of your files, everything that you have. You ended up not having access to any of that, and they require a payment to, in theory, give you an unlocking key that most of the times really it's not a working key. So that fraud becomes level 2 fraud, because not only they did something like that, but they're also not giving you that, and it's a constant game. How do you prevent it?
Defend, yeah.
How do you prevent it? Very difficult, because it requires a lot of upkeep. You need to make sure that you're managing your vulnerabilities, that you're on top of anything that's vulnerable in your environment. Patching, you keep an eye on suspect traffic within your network, and you act on it immediately. It's not simply, oh, I'm getting this alert several times, let me disable it.
Yeah, I was going to say that was kind of led me to another question, was like, how do you know you're outside of the obvious, you're locked down, but how do you know, what are the signs that you look for and the suspicion that you have? Like, look, something's not right here. I think we have a problem.
Look, for example, it depends on what type of EDR solution you have. Like we had one that kept alerting one of our sysadmins for like 3 or 4 days. Hey, and I'm seeing lateral movement attempts, which is literally a user that's logged on to one system trying to jump to another constantly, whether directly or not, forcefully or not. And that's normally a sign that something is up, because that's not typical.
Got it.
That's not typical. This sysadmin decided to ignore those. The company that we ended up hiring later on to help with the remediation effort told us, if you guys had picked up those alerts very early on and isolate the systems where they were coming from, this wouldn't have happened.
Yeah.
So it's like I said, it's being proactive. It's keeping an eye on everything that you're getting, all the information. Nowadays, we have such a large amount of information coming to us from all of these solutions that we have in place. Well, let's use the information. Let's not just keep it, look at store a large amount of logs and all that. It's just analyzing them, getting the right people, getting the right talent to see what's going on and all that, and acting on it.
Yeah. So, one of the things we see, a lot of people have tools in place, but they have no one monitoring them.
Very expensive tools, by the way.
Right.
Very
So,
expensive tools.
What's your take on like some sort of a SOC or something along those lines? Because again, we see a lot of big companies that have products, but if you don't have someone managing them.
And it's not just an individual, it has to be a group, because like I said, there's such a large amount of data that you're getting hit with those logs that one person cannot handle that, because one way or another, something's going to fall through a crack.
Right.
And that one item that fell is the one that's going to hit you and end up costing you.
Yeah. Yeah. No doubt about it. So, and that kind of that's kind of part of the last question. The last question is, how do you defend against this? I mean, nothing's going to be 100%, right? But I think if you put a good security posture in place with, like you said, a SOC and a team with the right tools.
There are several areas that you would need to address. Number one, backups. I'm going to say it. Backups, and isolated backups, not backups that are reachable within the same network segment where your production thing is. You need to protect those like babies.
Yeah, like they're called air gapped, right?
Correct. You need to protect them like babies. Keep them isolated, not just storing them, but making sure that the backups that you have work. Because it doesn't matter if I have a ton of data being backed up, that when I go to restore during an emergency, oops, this is not working.
Yeah, that's funny. That's a sore spot for us. I hear customers say, we back up our data. I go, well, have you ever tried to restore it? What's your DR strategy? Because
exactly. That was going to be my next point. You need to make sure that you have a solid and well-tested DR strategy. It's not just on paper. You have to put it in action. You need to have tabletop exercises to make sure that the right people take care of the right responses at the right time, and that we know that what we have in case of an event will work when we need to step in and remediate. Backups is super important. Management of privileged credentials, or what's called PAM and PM, privilege access management. You have to be on top of those. A problem that a lot of enterprises have is that their privileged access people, their admins and all that, credentials are being used for long amounts of time without being rotated. So the longer a privileged credential is out there sitting hash or being used constantly and all that, the more time a threat actor has to sit on it and collect them and start seeing, okay, this hasn't changed. This hasn't changed. This is being used for this. This is being used for this. Let's hit it. The other thing too is that a lot of, and I'm sorry to call lazy some of my fellow previous sysadmins, they use their credentials, their privileged credentials, in a plethora of things that don't need to be used for. Like, you cannot set up tasks using your privileged account. You cannot have a service account that's really not a service account, because it has the permissions that it's using are full admin permissions. You cannot have automation, that you cannot have scripts sitting in there unprotected that have your privileged access credentials visible to people. So you need to make sure that you're protecting those accounts in a very hardcore way. That in the last two companies that I worked for, we have enforced rotation of those credentials daily.
Yeah.
By most big companies, certain solutions, certain PAM solutions, so that I think you don't give the time to a threat actor to sit on it and collect them.
Yeah, I know. I've worked for some big companies, and we're forced to change credentials every quarter, or I forget exactly, but it's a pain, but it makes sense.
It's a pain. It's a pain for regular users, because regular users don't like change and they don't like to get out of our routine and all that. But when you're talking about people that have privileged access, you have to be on top of those, because those are the ones that will be damaging to you. You may allow a threat actor to get into your network because you click on an email or something like that.
Sure.
They will just sit in there. They will be collecting the good goodies. One of my old bosses call them, which is a privileged access account. With those, you're going to be able to do a lot of damage and cost a lot of money for an enterprise. So protect those big time. And from the other side of that same coin is that not everyone needs to have privileged access. Not everyone needs to be a global administrator if you have Azure, for example, or not everyone needs to be an enterprise admin if you have Active Directory or a domain admin. Obviously, you need to have those roles to be able to perform certain tasks and all that. But the easiest way is to just-in-time access. You elevate to that role when you need it, and as soon as you're done, you come down to your normal, not Greek god level of access, because that's a problem. A lot of companies have a tendency of, hey, you are the domain admin, or you're the enterprise admin, or you are the GA admin. And that's a role that's completely open all the time. So if by any chance someone gets a hold of your credentials, you're giving them the keys to the kingdom, and you're in big trouble because you're not going to find out until it's too late the majority of times. So having not just the right DR strategy, but also being proactive at protecting your privileged access, making sure that those accounts are you're always auditing them. You're always making sure that people have the right and necessary level of access. And the final point is that a zero trust strategy. You don't trust anybody, and you always think that something bad is happening because you don't get comfortable. If you think that nothing is going to hit you, things are going to hit you super quick and very hard. If you're always of the mindset of someone is trying to hit me right now, you're going to be on top of it.
Right. No, that makes sense. I mean, unfortunately, that's the world we live in, right? I mean,
absolutely.
A lot of bad actors out there, and having zero trust is unfortunately the way to go. It's kind of a bad way to live, but unfortunately that's the way it's got to be.
Someone needs to be paid to be handling that amount of stress. It's the way I see it. And that's why cybersecurity professionals are in such high demand, because not everyone can handle this type of workload.
Yeah. Yeah, what's funny is, and I think it's getting better out there, and you can maybe speak to this a little bit more. We have a lot of customers, and we try to convince them that, hey, you really need to increase your security posture, and it's never a problem until it's a problem.
Oh, well, there's to me, there's the funniest thing ever. It's a meme that always pops up every time that a big name company gets hit. It's like the budget before the incident, the budget after the incident.
That's right.
Pennies to piles of cash, and that's the reality. Yeah. Because you decide to not listen to your leadership, to your security leadership, that's always telling you, hey, we need to spend this amount of money, not because we want to spend it. It's not, the luxury life. It's something that's needed, and it's something that if we ever get hit, you will be very happy that we had the necessary measures in place to remediate quickly.
Yeah.
And it's all encompassing. It's not just not letting you go to a social media site when you're navigating from no, it's having a good DR strategy, is engaging the necessary resources from outside of a company, having them on a retainer. It's having good cyber insurance, which is gonna become very, very, one of the things that I think it's gonna happen during 2023 is that cyber insurance is going to become even more expensive, even more limited, or non-existent in many cases. So a lot of companies that have always have the mindset of, oh, I'm passing that responsibility to my insurance carrier, are going to have to redo their strategy and put the necessary resources in place to try to minimize as much as possible their incidents.
Yeah, no, we're hearing from our customers, their insurance companies are basically saying, if you don't do A, B, C, and D, we're out.
It's going to become very, I think part of the way the industry is changing every day. There's going to be a lot of insurance carriers that are going to literally tell you, you need to have this solution from this vendor, this solution from this vendor, and this solution from this vendor. If you don't, we're not going to cover you, which is, it's a good thing, but it's not a good thing because not everyone can go with the Ferrari sometimes.
Yeah, no, and that muddies the waters a little bit when insurance companies start mandating what vendors you choose, right?
Right.
I haven't seen that yet, but I knew things like.
I think it's going to come. There was an article this week from I believe the CEO of Zurich saying that cyber insurance is going to become a thing of the past in terms that it may not be available anymore because it's too costly for the carriers, or if it is, it's going to become very expensive and it's going to become way too in a box that you have to have exactly this or we're not going to cover you. So
yeah, we'll see how it shakes out, right?
yes, sir.
You know, only time will tell on that. But
only time will tell.
You know,
all I know is that the bad guys are not going to stop. The bad guys
Yeah.
don't take a vacation. They don't take holidays.
No,
they are just going to be hammering because it's the way they make money.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you that, you know, I've seen a change in the time I've been in the business from, you know, it was never an issue, but now it's front and center for pretty much everybody we talk to. That security is right top of mind, especially at the C level, right? No one wants to see their name in the news.
No, I mean, especially after what happened with Uber. No, nope, you don't want to do that. You don't want to do that.
Yeah. So,
which, you know, that's a whole different discussion, but I can tell you that, man, CISOs, I have the utmost respect for a CISO, because even though they're part of the C-suite, they're not listened to a lot of the times, even though they're bringing just juicy good stuff. And then their head rolls later on when something happens.
They're going to be the first to get fired, right? If they get breached and it's public and it's ugly.
Yeah, absolutely.
But that's why they get paid the big money.
Exactly.
You know,
exactly. Which is kind of funny, because that's the typical excuse. Well, you get the big money. Yeah, if you're paying big money to someone like me, you should listen to what I'm telling you.
Yeah,
which a lot of times doesn't happen.
Yeah, no, I hear you. So, well, this was a great conversation, and I really enjoyed it. We covered a lot of subject, Venezuela, we're talking world politics too. We're covering it all on this show.
Crazy weather in Texas.
That's right. But enjoy the conversation about the cybersecurity too. I think we gave, you know, some people out there some good guidance on, you know, what to do to kind of prevent and remediate, and some good steps to take. So thought it was really good. Any final words for the folks out there that are thinking about, you know, maybe making some changes to the cybersecurity posture?
You know what? The number one factor that affects your cybersecurity posture is the human factor.
Yeah.
So train your people. Train your people. You don't have to do it in a bad way. You don't have to you know, hammer it down with them, but be proactive. Give them the necessary resources to understand that sometimes clicking on an email just because it's coming supposedly from their bosses or something like that is not the right thing.
Yeah.
The other thing is that make sure that you teach them also that an enterprise asset is an enterprise asset, and a home asset is a home asset. One of the issues that I've seen in the past a lot is that people tend to use their work computers for non-work related stuff. And the problem is it creates a lot of overhead for the IT departments to be maintaining that. Just save yourself the headache. Don't use an enterprise asset for non-work related stuff, period. That's it.
No, that's
it. Just keep an eye out there. And, you know, if you notice something that's strange, out of the ordinary, report it to your IT team, report it to your security team. Don't let it sit in there 2 or 3 days. The moment that you see something, make a call, send an email, send a Teams message, because the earlier we can stop it, the less of a headache it's going to be. And the problem is, a lot of the times it will impact your bonuses, it will impact even your employment, because if a company gets hit really hard and loses a lot of money, regretfully, a staff reduction is the first thing that's going to happen.
That's too bad. Yeah, and you know, I've had some other security guests on, and they've all said, you know, make the employees part of the solution, right? Don't make them feel like they're going to get publicly shamed.
Yeah,
don't berate them. Say, hey, look, it's going to happen. You're going to get tricked once in a while, but just let's educate you, make you be aware, and proactively.
Don't shame someone that does something wrong. Use it as a learning example, and show it. Hey, you know what? Next time, make sure you look for things that may be odd. An email that's coming at a time that never has come before, a certain way that people write the message or stuff like that. Just be proactive and just keep an eye open on everything. And that goes from the CEO to the intern, because a threat actor will try to hit all of them at the same time and trying to gain access to.
They're not going to discriminate. They're going to.
Correct.
That's correct. So, well, cool. Well, Hernán, we'll kind of end on that note. I think I appreciate all the counsel and the advice, and really enjoyed having you on the show.
Thank you very much, Paul. I'm a big fan. Have enjoyed your podcast since it started, and obviously it's a privilege to have been invited to participate in it. Thank you very much.
Thanks. You've been a great guest. Really appreciate it. And so,
thank you very much. Have a wonderful 2023.
All right, and that's it for another edition of Business Brains and the Bottom Line podcast. Till next time.
Thank you, sir.